you very much, Graham. That's really great to be here. Thank you for letting me do the presentation today. I regret that I can't be there to meet you all because from all the previous AMSAT-UK colloquiums, I always really enjoyed to meet everyone in person and have all the small talks. So I remember I did not miss much of those colloquiums. I think I started with one of the first one and tried to be there every year, except when we had the launch or something. There were quite a few occasions where this more happened actually, but however, I look indeed forward to seeing you next year in person and have talks together. So thank you very much. So I will give you an update about the situation at AMSAT-DL at the present. Before that, I really congratulate Erich Eichmann, Delta Kilo 1 Tango Bravo, the author of the SAT-PC program, the satellite tracking software. He really deserves it. He is such a long time supporter of AMSAT for so many years, and I can't think back when I met him first time, and he is such also lovely personality, but it's amazing what he has done all over the years. And I talked with him a few months ago. I believe he is already approaching the 90s. I hope I'm not wrong, but he is still a young man for us. So it's amazing what he is doing, and he's still working on his software and maintaining it. It's really fantastic. So congratulations, Erich. You really deserve it. And by the way, I still have the trophy here. That's mine. I got in 2013. It's amazing how time is flying and how much the world changed. But more about that in a few minutes. So let's start. So Oscar 100 is already 4 years in orbit. It was launched in November 2018. Transponder was opened in January 2019. And we are still amazed how well it works and how stable. So it's a world first geostationary amateur radio transponder, thanks to Qatar and the ham radio community there, helping to make this a reality. So indeed, we have a great coverage from far west to far east, as you can see here on the left screen, and almost from the North Pole to the South Pole, or to Antarctica. We will also hear more later about that. So it is amazing what kind of view we have here, thanks to the full coverage of the wide beam. And basically what you see on the footprint is also what the satellite is seeing. So we do not have spot beams. We have more or less coverage of the whole Earth. Sometimes I'm getting asked about pictures. So there is this artificial picture shown here. And the only picture basically which exists is the one from the separation from the launch, and this photo here on the right, which I have stolen from the canteen at AMSAT because they had it on the wall. So basically there are no other pictures existing showing the satellite in more details, and that is indeed because it's a commercial satellite and they may not want to have more details. But anyhow, the only detail where I can give you more information is, and just on a hint, it's not a spare transponder. Very often you read and hear people saying, oh, this is just a reused TV transponder, reconfigured TV transponder, but it isn't indeed. The only part which is in common is here in the middle, this bluish part, the TWTs. Those are actually the same one used for the TV transponders for the downlinks. So we are using the same TWT because the so-called KU band is very close to our X S-band, so it even did not need any kind of retuning to reuse them for our purposes. And in fact, these are spare ones, which at any time can be used for one of the commercial transponders, just to make sure you understand. So on the left side, even that is a custom design. All the uplink is completely different because we are uplinking in S-band, and TV transponders or TV channels are usually not uplinked in S-band. So all this red area here, including the up and downlink antennas, is a custom design for AMSAT, made on our specification, on our requirements, but built by Mitsubishi Electronic Company, which actually is the builder of the satellite. Also very fortunate for us, there's another thing which makes us different from a commercial transponder or typical geostationary satellites, which is the footprint. So here on the right, you see the QO100 wide beam, which basically covers the whole area. So the red line is a 5-degree and the greenish line is a 10-degree elevation. The 0-degree is not shown here, but you can imagine that. So important to understand is typically all the geostationary satellites used commercially, they have spot beams, and these, for example, on the left side are the spot beams for the KU band TV channels, which can be found on SHALE-2. So this, again, only a few pictures just to remember. This is the ground station which we built in Qatar at the SHALE Satellite Control Center. We have some, on the left side, some dedicated antennas, including a 2.4 meter antenna for the uplink. And on the right side, you can basically see our 90-inch racks, which contain all the equipment for the DATV beacon. Even live, we have a redundant LiLi here, but it's not in use at the moment. We can even talk from there. We helped, or the original plan was to put up, so this is actually, this room is very close, is in a shelter very close to all the antennas. These are only our antennas. There are much bigger antennas and much more antennas around. So this is all in a shelter, and the original idea was to have in the main building, where the big control room is nearby, also it's kind of club station. But due to Corona and many other things, it is not yet existing. So, but we will see. So, and on the other hand, we have our ground station in Bochum at Sternwarte. It's Bochum Observatory, or Sternwarte Bochum, as we call it in Germany. You see here the big radome. Inside of the radome is a 20-meter antenna. We use that for some radio astronomy and other things. And in front of it, you see all our antennas, which we typically use here for Q100, mainly for the LiLi operation. So on the right, you see the LiLi rack. So everyone wonders, what is LiLi? How is she looking like? She is not so pretty, but pretty enough for us. So here we have all the inside, the similar unit like in Qatar here, the actual LiLi unit, and some other uplink converters, downlink converters for more experiments. And here below, view in the shack there in the control room, where we have everything. Actually, we have even more stuff now. This photo is 1 or 2 years old, but we can also communicate from there. And sometimes when we are going there, you can even hear me on the Q100 transponder when you are lucky. Yeah, just a few words to the transponder band plan. I think it is widely known, but there is something new coming, and it's here on the right side. So we have here the section of where we have SSB only, and then this section where we have mixed modes, special purposes, including contest area. Then there was here in red this emergency frequency, and we just added another frequency, which is a broadcast frequency. This broadcast frequency shall be used for general broadcast news, for example, from RSGB, maybe from DRC, maybe from India and other regions, that they have a frequency where they can do their broadcast of amateur radio news. We did not make individual assignments, so we had a request and we said, okay, we will not assign one frequency for RSGB, one frequency for DRC, and so on and so on, but it makes sense to have a general frequency where everyone can tune in, and in fact where interference with normal contacts, QSOs, is minimized. We had a recent case. Unfortunately, there was something like a shitstorm, which I don't really understand. I think there was one broadcast going on like every Sunday, I think at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, I don't remember, UTC. And there were some DX activity in split mode, and for some reason, they did not really notice the other one, and the broadcast started, and then people complained about that, and so it was on a higher frequency. So anyway, we thought it's a good idea to assign this kind of broadcast frequency. It is actually one frequency, it's 855, and hopefully, I don't expect that there will be several broadcasts wanting to broadcast at the same time. And if so, I would kindly ask those to coordinate among them to schedule something like that. But I would say the good thing is it's a relatively protected area because it's also close to the emergency frequency. So hopefully that makes sense. So this is in principle the change on the band plan, this new broadcast frequency used for news about amateur radio in general, following our rules. And then also here on the right side, we have this experimental multimedia beacon. So the high-speed modem, which was put up there some time ago, and it's the experimental beacon, high-speed multimedia or high-speed modem. And when you install it, you can install it from our webpage and find more documentation about that. But basically, when you install that modem software on your PC, you have something in an HTML window, which looks like here on the left side. You have the narrowband activity, wideband transponder activity. You have the X cluster messages here, the CW schema here on the right side. We also included Q100DX Club News here, and also we have a place here for the latest AMSAT bulletins. So up to 10 bulletins will be stored, and you can cycle through them. So this turned out to be very useful, and it is really using digital modulation to the edge. So it's about everything is transmitted with about 7.2 kilobit per second in 8 APSK modulation. So it has still a very narrow bandwidth fitting into our 2.7 kilohertz bandwidth limitation on the narrowband transponder. So the team around it is Kurt, mainly Kurt DJ0ABR, who is the creator of the modem and the software around it, and also supported by Matthias DD1US, Florian DF2ET, and Jens DH6BB, who keep all the system running, do the software updates. Bulletins are automatically retrieved and put here, so we also think this is quite a nice add-on to experiment with. And here on the right side, this is, for example, the hardware used for the CW scanner. We have indeed also the wideband transponder. Everyone should know the web SDR, and in particular the chat here, which is required for coordination. So if you start to transmit on the wideband transponder, please make sure you are not interfering with others, and keep in touch here with them, what you are doing, what are your parameters, and so on. Not much news here. The DATV beacon is there, and yeah, it sometimes hangs up. So we have a hardware and software watchdog running. So sometimes the beacon is crippled, and it takes a few hours until it is reset automatically and turns into a normal beacon again with a video. We hope to fix that already this year, but yeah, with Corona and also with the soccer games in Qatar, we had to postpone that to next year because it's very difficult to travel to Qatar, especially now with all these big soccer games and so on. So we were advised by our friends in Qatar from the QARS to shift that after the soccer games. So the beacon is still crippled sometimes, and we have to live with that until at least next year. So there is indeed a lot of activity on Q100, which is very welcome, and we see a lot of DX activities, portable operation, which is always great. But you also know we have a very special station, which is the Neumeier Station 3 in Antarctica. And a couple of years we made an agreement with the Alfred Wegener Institute, AWI, which is operating the station, to set up Q100 amateur radio stations there as well. DP0GVN is already active on shortwave. Some of you may know that. But now they even have a more stable and regular connectivity through Q100. And this is since 2020, when we for the first time set up the station there. The first operator was Roman, HB9HCF. You see him on the left side. And it was really fantastic and amazing to have him there. And he enjoyed a lot talking to you all over the satellites. And yeah, then in 21, he was followed by operator Teresa, Delta Charlie 1 Tango Hotel. And at the moment, so that is the 42th overwintering team. Part of that team is Carsten, Delta Mike 2 Kilo X-Ray, who is also still operating the station. And the good news is, even for the next one and after that, so for the 43rd and 44th overwintering team, we already have licensed new ham radio operators. So the saga and school contacts will continue. And there is actually one of the new operators after the next one. He is an experienced Q100 operator. So there's not, if the satellite survives and if the antenna survives, there shall be really, really interesting times. So only a few pictures from our first antenna, which we delivered in 2020. Actually, we built it in 2019. So we got an antenna which is typically used in marine applications with this typical radome. We don't need the automatical steering, so we put up here a fixed antenna inside of this radome. Everything was installed on top of the Neumeier Station 3, but unfortunately last year it was blown away due to a heavy storm. You know about that. So after the storm we had to build another one, a new one. So we started doing that in 2021. We had not much time to do that, but we did it because indeed there's only one possibility to get it to Antarctica by ship. So it arrived there in early 2022. It was put here back on the roof of the Neumeier Station 3 and is in use since then for SSB and also for DATV. So there is another thing also related to the research in Antarctica. So there is this German research icebreaker called Polarstern, and no surprise, radio amateurs are everywhere somehow. There is also an amateur radio station called DB2OS, which is in use for many years already on shortwave. And why not? Because that ship is going to Antarctica bringing new equipment. They also brought the equipment for DP0GVN and other stuff. So why not bringing a station on this ship? And yeah, here you can already see on the left side the famous grid map from Remco, PA3FYM. It's always nice to follow. It may not be the last status, but it's always nice to follow where are all the activities, because he is really keeping track on this. And you see here these red dots here down to Antarctica, and that was the activity on the Polarstern ship. And on the right side, these were the maps from these vessel tracking, these AIS systems. So we could follow here the track, but that fits exactly what actually happened here then on the activation on Q100. So this was quite kind of portable operation. So on the left side, you see Felix, DL5XL, who is basically the responsible one for all the activities in Antarctica, all the logistics behind that. And here you see Teresa on her trip to Antarctica. And so they tried to operate from the ship and make as many contacts as possible. Just a few things. So when they had good weather, I think it was very convenient to make contacts through Q100, and most of the time the ship is going into the same direction, and even if it moved slightly by Armstrong controller here, Felix could just adjust the dish a little bit and can continue his talks. During bad weather, indeed, it is more difficult, and this is still good weather, what we see here. So, some amazing facts is, indeed, you know this, whenever such special stations appear on Q100, you see the big pile up here in the waterfowl diagrams. So usually operators are doing split operation. It's not possible otherwise to handle so many callers, and it really spreads up over 50 kilohertz or sometimes even more bandwidth. So usually you see here DP0POL Maritime Mobile, but this could also be DP0GVN. It's always the same thing. So here calling and then listening, and here everyone is trying to get in touch with him, and he just selects one of those to finally make the contact. So in total, they made over 4,000, almost 4,500 contacts were made by the crew here from DBPOL. In total, 53, we call them red grids because they are in the water, and roughly 1,000 different call signs were logged in the footprint alone by the station on board the Polarstern. Yeah, and during such pileups it can be very busy and maybe sometimes also frustrating, but yeah, it's a challenge. So anyhow, and as you saw here, weather can be bad. It's not always like, I think they in the left picture here, they were close to the equator. So it is easy for them indeed. But during bad weather and as far as they come into the Arctic or Antarctic region, it is getting really cold. So instead of having this kind of portable antenna, always better having an antenna protected like in a radome. And if you look here on the upper deck, you see very familiar antennas, which you already have seen at the Neumeier 3 station and so on. So we decided it would be great if we could have permanent activity on Polarstern and get another radome and another antenna. But the main thing is indeed antennas need to be moved around. So we need a steering for the dish, which is continuously adjusting the movement of the ship. So if there's a wave or the ship is doing a turn, the antenna always needs to track the satellite. And this kind of equipment is available from commercial antennas. And we have been able to obtain such an antenna, modify it for our purposes. So we started that activity already in last year in September-October time frame, because we had a very short window to bring it on the ship. It was the same ship which was also bringing the new antenna to the Antarctic station. So we had this rented truck, and we actually have two antennas here, one for Antarctica, the new one, and the other antenna for the Polarstern. And yeah, so we had to modify that to make it operatable for DP0POL, but all the tracking electronics inside the mechanics is based on these typical C-tail antennas used on ships for weather, satellites, for communication, for TV, and so on. So on the left side, this is how this. I will not go much to details here, but this is how it is set up normally, and we found out that it is quite easy to modify and reuse a lot of parts of it to make it working as a Q100 ground station. So, for example, they don't use S-band for uplink. So, and all this converter stuff we took out, and we put there our known AMSAT-DL Q100 transverter and connected that to some of the assembly. So we have two coax cables running down to the underdeck, and which is also controlling the antenna itself. Yeah, so here is, for example, our transverter power supplies, the splitters and so on, integrated onto this whole system. And the underdeck, the Radio Shack, is basically consisting of an IC 9700 and so on. So everything was finalized in 21, and then here we see Happy Florian driving all the way from Bochum to Bremen. Actually, no, not to Bremen, but north of Hamburg, to the company which actually is installing that on the ship. So it was, I think a lot of people were wondering, what is Florian here having on the Autobahn? So then in October we did the final testing and burn-in. I can't show it here, but you could simply move you can lift this antenna or the fix the ground plate, but the antenna will keep its direction. So it is completely gimbaled and able to adjust whatever movement. So there are sensors inside, accelerators, gyros, which keep the antenna pointing always to the same direction, and the underdeck electronics will do the rest. So as I say, weather can be rough, and so that is how we brought the antenna down to Antarctica, and also finished it for the ship. So, what is next here with Polarstern? So, we were actually quite lucky because, earlier this year or last year, we hoped to have it already on the ship last year, but due to Corona and other things, everything had to be rescheduled, and it was even looking like that we cannot make it until then, and that we even have to wait next year. But surprise, surprise, a lot of very helpful people managed to bring the antenna on the chip, and it's already installed. And I can say that early next year, something will happen. So watch the transponder, I will say. And indeed, I have to thank our team here in alphabetical order who was helping to make this. Next year I will have more details, but it was it was quite a lot of work. Many weekends in Bochum, in Hamburg. Also the team, we had people making the new feed for the antenna, and it was really a lot of work. But we hope it will pay out. The Polarstern is already in near South Africa, and it is going to travel soon to Punta Arenas in Chile. And we hope, and they are eager to do it. So there will be a lot of new wet grids. And also I have to thank you at this stage for Charlie, who is helping us with doing all the contacts. And Charlie DK3ZL, he already has a QSL from the Polarstern for his first contact. I think it was in 21 on Q100 when they did the portable operation. So look forward to that. So he had a contact with Felix actually. Charlie is also very, enthusiastic about school contacts, and we will do the same with the Polarstern. There will be a lot of school contacts, but also normal contacts. And he is doing the same thing for Antarctica, for the Neumayer 3 station, and school contacts are very popular. If you want to do that, this is not limited to German schools. So every school in the footprint of Q100 wanting to do some spectacular contacts with Antarctica, learn more about the climate, what they are doing there, the weather, and so on. If you want to see penguins, please, and you want to make this with schools and so on, please contact Charlie DK3ZL for coordination. So we have here some German schools. We have Matthias, who is really very supportive here with the schools organizing such events, and it is really amazing and surprising to see how that is appreciated by those scholars, and they really like it, and even the questions they ask are really nice and sometimes funny in a good way, but very good questions. And I think it's a good thing to demonstrate amateur radio also in the public. And it actually happens. I lost counting, but I think almost 20 school contacts have already been made here in Germany, and it is very popular, and it's also organized by local clubs from the DIRC together with AMSAT and coordinated by Charlie, and they also get a lot of coverage in the news, the newspapers and so on. And you see here, the kids are really enthusiastic about it and learn a lot, and they can really have hands-on how to adjust, how to find out where is the satellite, how to adjust the antenna, and the setup is quite easy. So, Graham will tell you more in the afternoon. Just a few notes regarding extreme low elevation DXing via Q100. So maybe that is the next challenge. So we have been very fortunate to have some stations in Indonesia also very active on Q100, and they are operating at really low elevation, close to 0 degrees and maybe even below. It's a challenge, and they made it. it was really great, and they, I think, made the long distance record over Q100, basically from Indonesia to Brazil. Really nice. So interesting question is, how far can we go down? And our 20-meter radio telescope in Bochum is quite a good reference for that. So here we receive probes from Mars. You see here the picture. That is a spectrum diagram from the Chinese Tianwen-1, which we are tracking every day since launch. You can even see that if you go to the AMSAT-DL YouTube channel, you can see the video there in the live stream if we are not tracking stereo A. So it's interesting to see, okay, what is the minimum elevation where we can still receive signals in Bochum, because the frequency 8.4 gigahertz, that is the deep space network frequency used for such probes, where NASA is also receiving them, Madrid, Canberra, and so on. And here you see the waterfall spectrum of Tianwen-1 when close to the horizon. Actually, elevation you see here is roughly minus 0.3 something degrees, and you can see some faint signals, but yeah, at minus 0.3 ish, then signal completely disappears, and the signal here is really faint. And by the way, the Bochum antenna has a 3 dB beam width of only 0.06 degrees, so that's really a small antenna beam. And if I go back, you can see typically signals are really strong, and here they are really small. So thanks to James, he made some calculations. We cannot ignore the effect of refraction. So refraction means that the antenna is pointing below the target, and you can still receive basically the antenna, the signal, because of refraction. And on 8.4 gigahertz, which is similar to 10 gigahertz, the downlink of Q100, you see that at a true elevation of 0 degrees, you can apply a correction, and you would still be able to receive the signal, but it is 25 dB below the normal power. Also, to take into account this, the Q100 orbit is not perfect, so it is oscillating 0.03 degrees. So if you make a calculation, you will find out the elevation is varying. It's not always the same as you might expect from a geostationary satellite. So James made here a calculation for Cape Spear, for example. Their elevation would be something in the order of minus 0.2 degrees, including refraction. So this is marginally. So it is a challenge. So it is definitely a challenge, but we think this kind of DXing can also be a lot of fun, and probably we will learn a lot. Indeed, Bochum is located not at the coast, so basically over land. There are some hills far away which should not have big impact, but usually we can see that at 0 degree elevation, signal is always disappearing. So maybe there are some duct effects over water, always something where we can learn and maybe make you interesting discoveries. So I have to be quick for the last 5 minutes. Also, I was asked if I still have the picture with the bumpy road. Some of you may remember, I don't have it here. I have a new one. It's about where is AMSAT going in the next years. And this is quite a thing which I'm thinking about for quite a while. And I think a lot of our old-timers and AMSAT friends, presidents and teams and so on, also in AMSAT-UK, think a lot about this. What is the biggest challenge for AMSAT? What do you see in this photo? what is the common thing in all these photos when you see if it is in news, in magazines, about startups, new businesses, new startups, everyone is talking about startups. And what you see here in every picture, even if it's not a startup about satellites, you see rockets. But what else do we see? Here we see very young people. Maybe those people we want in AMSAT, but they are not in AMSAT anymore, or it's very hard to attract them. I think Martin nailed this quite good in his presentation this morning when he talked about small SATs are mainstream now. And this is actually one of the things. It's not a mystery anymore. I mean, if I look back how I came to AMSAT, in general, I have to say, yes, it was because it was exotic. You could do things with satellites which you couldn't do anywhere else. So 20 years ago, that was before New Space. What is the situation now? We have many universities have their own space program, CubeSats, Pico cubes or Pocket cubes, and students have already fun there. They can already do things and live their interests. And ideally, when they finish studying, a lot of them go directly into the new space business. They create companies. They are very successful. So in general, this is a good thing. Please don't misunderstand me. So students can design, build, launch, operate satellites even without AMSAT and even without ham radio. There is no need for them to join AMSAT anymore or even become a radio amateur, because they can do all this easily. And if you talk with some of those startups, or if you are approached by them if you are running a business or something, you quickly find out sometimes they never heard about AMSAT. They don't know what AMSAT is or what amateurs have done in the past. So it's really changing. As Martin said, doing satellites is mainstream. So, and even I would say money is important for AMSAT organizations to organize themselves, but it's not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is, because of what I just explained, to find volunteers willing to spend a lot of time, and time is money. So for a student, why should he volunteer if he can make money later on with his business, which is fine, again. But this also creates a kind of brain dream. I mean, I'm doing AMSAT for over 35 years. If I think about it, I'm crazy. I'm thinking, my goodness, what happened the last 30 years? And also, one thing, I don't really have answers for all of that. I just want to say, and we need to think about that, but it's also about nationalism. If I remember Oscar 40, it was one of the greatest projects which I enjoyed so much, meeting all our friends. AMSAT P3D, Oscar 40, it took a long time to finally launch it, and it did not operate as much, still 4 years, but we hope to have it longer. But this was a truly international project, which was so great, and it brought AMSAT together and the people and so on. But what killed it? What can we do? So can we work again internationally? As I say, ITAR was a big killer, and we are still suffering from that. Most of the team members we worked together internationally, they disappeared. And once you are disappeared, you will probably not come back. Shall we collaborate with startup companies? Maybe yes. We still offer a big community. We have a lot of people delivering telemetry and so on, but this is also downsizing. It might be replaced by ground stations as a service. There are companies building up ground stations, even in the amateur radio bands, to serve the universities with receiving their satellites. which is still fine for me. We only have to make sure that we follow the rules and don't misuse the amateur satellite band. So yes, why not? Why should we as AMSAT not collaborate with startups and universities? Sometimes it already happens. They still call them AMSAT, but if you really look at it, it's not the AMSAT we had 30 years ago. But still, it's fine for me. I don't want to get misunderstood. So, not sure, maybe we have also to look in the mirror and think about what can we do. We have somehow to accept the reality of our new world and try to do something. So what did we do? Sorry, I'm running a little bit over time. I hope you don't punish me when I come next time. I will make it quick. It's one of the last slides. So at AMSAT-DL, we also thought about that. We have still AMSAT P3E around. We have to realize we didn't got it launched in the last 15 years, so it's still there, but we have to clean up our things. And by the way, AMSAT is not only powered by pizza, but also by ring cakes. This is from Jens' mother. I have to say this because she always, when we meet in Bochum, Jens is bringing the cake from his mother, and we really enjoyed it. So we needed the energy because we did a lot of work in Bochum. It started as a joke. We found out that Thilo, here on the right side, he is the director of the Bochum Observatory. He came around and said, "Oh, I have a CubeSat." So this is actually an engineering model of Uwe Wann from Würzburg University. We made this photo internally to make a joke and put some shock on our team members because everyone thought, oh, Peter will never do a CubeSat, but things can change. So actually that picture got so much, it also appeared on Twitter, I have to say, and after that happened, it was crazy. People contacted me and told me, hey, Peter, can we collaborate? Do you know there is a launch program running in Germany with 2 companies trying to put some payloads on it and so on. So it somehow, we cleaned our brain, we cleaned our integration room, we renovated that is before and this is after, put some new things inside here. We still have P3E, but you see here some kind of engineering model of a CubeSat. So something will and must happen. Hopefully very soon we can go more official, but you see here some pictures of CubeSats and PicoCubes, and that's something which we will hopefully do if we got the contracts and put a new momentum into AMSAT-DL, also attract new people, and hopefully then, as I say, next year AMSAT-DL is celebrating 50 years. From those 50 years, almost 20, actually over 23, 22 years, I'm already in the board of directors of AMSAT-DL, and I have been active for even longer time. So this is not the end. So, but we have to look what can we do in the future. What is even from a resource problem, what can we even achieve, and we have to face it. Phase 3 will probably, I have to say this, never launch. We will not throw it away. We have it in storage there, but the likeliness is very little, and there are a lot of reasons for that, which I have talked before. So, finally, I'm at the end. I have to thank you very much. I hope we can discuss this in more details next year, and I really look forward for some open discussions, proposals, what can AMSAT do to make another 50 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay. Are there any questions?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Are there any questions?
I'll ask a question.
Yes, Jenny.
Can you hear me okay?
I'll repeat it for you.
Concerning Polish Stern and DG0 VGN, would it take too much to upgrade it for television?
I think it's mainly due to the operators. So we have Carsten out there.
Sorry.
event, he already made some activity in DITV. So we last time we fixed the station. We have a new power amplifier and some other equipment. So in theory, he can do that. But indeed, he has a main job there. So I think he's not doing that so often at the moment, but hopefully he will have more activity there.
Yeah, just one final point. I was very pleased to speak with DP0 GBN during the Queen's Jubilee earlier in the year. But unfortunately, they didn't have EQSL facilities, so we couldn't exchange our call signs. So it'd be good to have that added if possible.
Can you repeat for me?
Okay, so
It was a sorry, I'll get the microphone the right way around. Yeah, that's right. The question was in relation to QSL cards from
basically,
DP0 GBN?
the Antarctic station,
Yeah.
which I contacted with GB70QE earlier in the year. We'd like to have exchanged at EQSL, but apparently...
Oh, EQSL, sorry.
Yeah, didn't have the facilities.
It was a question about EQSLs, Peter.
I answer that question. That is something we have to ask the QSL manager, but yeah, I don't know anything about that. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions from the floor here? No? Are there any questions online? I know we've got 45 or 50 viewers on the stream, but no, well in that case, Peter, just obviously thank you for that grand presentation covering a lot of ground, lots of good news there about the future activities through QO100 and some thought-provoking stuff and things that we will consider here later on during our dinner before the raffle and before the auction. If you like, I'll take some money off you now for the raffle, but I do take plastic. Okay, Peter, again, on behalf of everybody in the room, thank you very, very much indeed.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
7:30.
Bye-bye.
Bye.